Hey, welcome to the best weekend of the pro football season. We got 8 teams, 4 games, all chasing that one trophy, and we're going to get you ready for it. Beat the Odds starts right now.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds,
sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by Sports Grid.
All right, here we go. Welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos. Not to start on a sad note, but we only have 7 games left this season, including what some are calling the game of the year, Baltimore and Buffalo. I got it circled. You need to leave. That energy can't be here.
Game of the year? Give me a break. So the winner can go lose in Kansas City the week after?
Homer.
I mean, they are the back-to-back champs. Getting no love. Coming up on today's show, Jack and Teddy are doing a deep dive into all 4 games, the numbers and trends they like, plus our player prop showdown, and of course, best bets.
And who better to talk playoff football than our champ, Brandon Marshall? Dave may not think that Baltimore-Buffalo game is a big deal, but Brandon does, and we're going to break it down. Our pals from Sports Grid are ready to go, too.
Hey, Vegas, we're excited to beat the odds with you guys once again. Coming up, Joe Lisi and I will take a look at a couple of backs who had big weeks in Buffalo's James Cook and Baltimore's Derrick Henry. And can you expect the same with their matchup coming up this weekend? Break that down, so sit tight. We'll join you guys in just a bit. It's back out to the crew in Vegas.
All right, so let's tee it up. It's a great, great weekend. We all love it. All the big dogs are basically still alive.
I love it when Debbie Downer and Mr. Kansas City start battling in the intro. But I'll tell you, when you not just from a watchability standpoint, but from a wagering standpoint, one of the better games also, because you don't have the big numbers. Last week we had to deal with that. Sometimes we got there, sometimes we didn't, and it all depended on the number.
Sure. Last week was pretty good. Next weekend's pretty good too. And let's not forget, 3 weekends from now, maybe the best weekend of them all.
Big one.
This is a good football weekend. Let's break it down.
It's great.
What do you got?
All right, let's talk some shockers and stunners, a little recap of what happened this past weekend. And we'll start with the 2 Saturday games. Houston over L.A. That was a real good game for the house. The public bettors were all over L.A. in that contest. So Houston survives and advances for the 2nd straight year. And tough beat for under bettors in that ball game. What happened? Blocked extra point, returned for 2 the other way. Those 2 points were the difference between over and under. And of course, Baltimore over Pittsburgh, that was good 2-way action on Saturday. Game stayed under thanks to that scoreless 4th quarter.
Yeah, Houston's got to worry about the quarterback play for sure. And I would like everybody on the field, them to know the rules. I mean, we're not in volleyball. You can't bat the ball down, because I had under in that game, and that did sting. I mean, most people are not paying attention to that. But yeah, Saturday was one of those days that if you got the right side of some of those bounces, you got there. If not, maybe a tough day.
Sure. When we look at Sunday, I mean, Buffalo really dominant showing against Denver in that contest, although the wise guys bet the underdog. So it could have been worse for the books, public all over Buffalo in that ball game. Green Bay against Philly, well, Philly was okay, but Green Bay had injuries galore. They made mistakes galore. They turned the ball over. Wasn't pretty if you had Green Bay like I did last weekend. And, I mean, rookie quarterbacks with multiple playoff wins. Well, we got Mark Sanchez, we got Joe Flacco, we got Brock Purdy, all in the past decade plus. Are we going to see Jaden Daniels in that mix, Jack? Yeah,
mixed bag over. I don't know that we are. I mean, he's going to need some turnovers, but turnovers become a huge part of this. And you had a mixed bag last weekend. Important to remember that turnovers are going to have a lot to do with who wins and who doesn't win these things. When you have younger players, they're more susceptible to turnovers, so you got to be careful.
And then, of course, Monday night, where you had L.A. good, Minnesota bad, call it what you will. The bottom line is LA's defense controlled that contest. That was a good result for most books here in Vegas. There was lots of money on Minnesota.
Yeah, everybody thought they would bounce back. Apparently, Detroit beat them twice, so.
Sam Darnold started saying, "Ooh."
Right. How much money did he cost himself just in the last couple of weeks? I mean, he was really rolling along.
8 figures, probably?
Yeah, he's going to need some suntan and some margaritas when he goes to Cabo. So
I'm going to say he cost himself $100 million, 9 figures with just the performances in the last 2 games.
That's almost Jack's salary.
That makes me feel better about having the under, losing on a batted blocked field goal. So yeah, this week, get back after them. We got some with the big numbers and some that are straight up.
All right, coming up in the next segment, you guys are going to do a deep dive into the games this weekend. And to whomever set the schedule this weekend, our friend Jay Cornegay would like to buy you a drink. Mariah is at the Superbook Westgate Las Vegas to show us why.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with the Vice President of Superbook Marketing here at the Westgate, Jay Cornegay. Jay, we're coming off a wild card weekend, a lot of favorites winning outright, but how did you guys do overall here at the book?
Well, despite all the favorites that came in and covered, we had two small underdogs that saved the day for us. And Houston coming through for us in the very first game. And, of course, the LA team knocked off Minnesota that last game on Monday. So those two underdogs really helped us out.
And looking ahead to the divisional round, that one game that everyone seems to have circled is Buffalo-Baltimore. But looking at the futures and the line for this specific game, Baltimore has the edge over Buffalo. Why is that with so much hype around Buffalo down the stretch here?
Yeah, well, Baltimore, in the eyes of many, especially some of the educated players out there, they believe Baltimore is built for the playoffs. You know, they're very physical. Their defense is coming on. They've really come on over the last month or so. And, of course, they got that rushing game. So, you know, outside of Lamar making mistakes in these big games, they have that rushing game that they can really rely on this year. And I think that's why everybody's favoring Baltimore.
And sticking with this weekend's games, if you look at the schedule, more of those lopsided matchups coming on Saturday versus Sunday. We got some tighter games there. How is this schedule in the favor of the sports books?
Well, we'd like to buy the scheduler a few drinks because, you know, they really set it up good for us as the two big favorites out there. Kansas City and Detroit are playing on Saturday, and then we have the more balanced games that are scheduled for Sunday, and especially that last game between Baltimore and Buffalo, which we expect to get the most action, should be a split, and so that should reduce the liability for the books.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. Dave, we'll send it back to you in studio.
Thanks to you guys. So Teddy and Jack are going to be like tag team wrestlers for this next segment. Ooh, now I'm picturing Jack in spandex. Sorry, guys. The dynamic duo will break down all 4 games next.
Through one show without talking about Jack and spandex? Probably not. Before we head to break, in a win over Denver, Josh Allen broke the record for postseason rushing yards by a quarterback. Whose record did he break? The answer coming up next.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas
and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you, in a win over Denver, Josh Allen broke the record for postseason rushing yards by a quarterback. Whose record did he break? The answer, Lamar Jackson. Jackson claimed the record during Baltimore's win over Pittsburgh, breaking Steve Young's record of 594, but his reign was short-lived with just 602 yards. His record was broken the next day by Josh Allen, who now has 609 postseason rushing yards. So the two all-time leaders in postseason rushing yards by a QB will go head-to-head Sunday night in Orchard Park. It's going to be a good one, and it's time to bring in our champ, Brandon Marshall. We're going to stick with that game here in the divisional round. The line opened, Buffalo 1.5-point favorites. It swung the other way in favor of Baltimore. Can you get a read on this matchup?
It's tough because obviously, you know, everybody's pointing to what happened the first time they played. Right now, it's a totally different team because Baltimore's defense is actually a lot better, and they played Josh Allen really well. So, you know, it's kind of tough to see what's going to happen. I think Baltimore's going to pull it out. The only way Buffalo can is if they can stop Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is the engine that makes this thing go. Now, Lamar is MVP. I think he'll win MVP, right? Absolutely. But at the same time, if they can, you know, stop the run, you know, get some more possessions on offense, run the ball with James Cook, then they might have a shot.
All right, it's going to be an interesting one. Now, we had a feeling LA was going to kill Minnesota's strong season, but I don't know if we anticipated the bloodbath that occurred. But should Philadelphia be worried about this LA team?
I didn't know their pass rush was that good.
Right.
Or is Minnesota's offensive line that bad?
Yeah.
It can't be. They went 14-3. I think we should be a little worried, you know, because first of all, any Sean McVay-led team is a dangerous team. The Sean McVay tree is fantastic. There's a lot of coaches that come from Sean McVay. He's a young coach, but he's one of the best. The way Philly looked, their defense is still stout, 100%, right? But at the end of the day, the offense was a little shaky, a little lackluster. Can they go into Philly and win? Maybe, you know, but I'm not counting out a Sean McVay-led team, especially how they played last week.
Yeah, now real quick, we got two lopsided matchups on Saturday with Houston, KC, and then we got Detroit and Washington. We're not expecting an upset maybe, but if there were to be one, would it be on the AFC side or the NFC side?
It won't be Kansas City, I promise you that.
Yeah.
If there was an upset, it would be in Detroit, which I don't see that happening.
Right.
But there's no way, it's tough to even fathom Kansas City losing to Houston. That's not going to happen. If it does happen, it'll be in Detroit.
Well, I'm going to be doing a little rain dance for the KC upset, so we'll see how that goes. But enough over there. Kansas City and Houston get the fun started Saturday afternoon, as we just mentioned. Jack, what are you looking at in this game?
Save that tape with Brandon saying no chance at all. There's always a chance in the playoffs, especially when you get this deep. We always hear that defense wins championships. Well, sometimes that is not what's going to happen. I think game script will have a lot to do with there being more points going on in both of these games. I'm going to talk about the totals going over that maybe you would think might have lower scoring games. Let's start with Kansas City and Houston. This is one of those games when you talk about Houston, they're going to have to mix it up. You can't. Kansas City's defense is really underrated because of all their stars offensively. And so if you're Houston, you're not going to be able to just line up and run in the line of scrimmage. We saw early in the game last week with Houston that when they put the game in their quarterback's hands, which they tried to do early in the game, he is prone to some mistakes. You can't become one-dimensional, so expect them to throw on early downs, more points, and you get Kansas City. This is a team that normally with Andy Reid likes to go under the total win time of possession, but he's getting a ton of weapons back, and this game is as much about the rest of the playoffs as it is this particular week. They've got to get those guys involved, use imagination, get confidence on that side of the ball, and then let your defense take over when you get your opponent one-dimensional situations, especially this week when you're a big favorite. So let's go over in that one. Also, 5 in a row have gone over when these two teams have played each other. We talk about the other one, Los Angeles and Philadelphia. Philadelphia has one, if not the top defense in the entire country. We know that Jalen Hurts can start slow. All those things absolutely are true. But when you talk about Philly, they've been scoring about 30 points a game over the last month or so, with the exception of one game. Their offense is clicking a little bit better. And Los Angeles, if you're LA, you have got to mix it up. You cannot get unpredictable down in distances. It feels like if you're Los Angeles, they're going to be snow. When I go skiing and I'm pulled off the back of a boat and I don't catch the skis and my belly's just hitting the ground the entire time, I'm just holding on for dear life. That's an image. It's not pretty. And I could see Los Angeles running into that. Matthew Stafford throwing it 50 times or so. So let's go over in that one as well. I think there's a lot of points.
All right, enough belly flopping out of you, Teddy. You got to look at the other two games.
Sure, let's talk about Washington and Detroit. And I understand that Washington won last week, but this is a real spotlight game for a team that hasn't been in the postseason, hasn't won a whole lot in the postseason, the better part of the last 3 decades. So we have to ask if Washington can handle this type of spotlight. And we have to ask if Washington has anything left in the tank. Each of the last 5 straight wins have come on the last possession, coming down to the wire. So we wonder if this team's gassed a little bit. Washington's 5 losses this year, 4 came by a touchdown or more. They've been able to win the close games. When they lose, they've been getting slapped around a little bit. And I'm telling you, this is the best Detroit team I've seen in my 27 years in Las Vegas. I'm not stepping in front of them. When it comes to Baltimore, number 1 offense in yards per play, 0.8 yards better than Buffalo. Number 1 defense in EPA allowed since week 11. Of course, no bargains for Baltimore right now. They're being priced like the best team in the league. But first meeting, Baltimore 7.9 yards per play, Buffalo just 4.1. The markets think that could happen again.
All right, for those of you who like to do the player props, listen up. Here is Sports Grid with 3 guys to watch.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here. We take a look at some players who advance to the next round of the Pro Football Playoffs and whose performances we expect to hold up as this postseason continues. And, Joe, one guy I know you have a lot of confidence in, that's Baltimore's lead back, Derrick Henry.
Absolutely. Look at the performance last week, Kev. 189 yards on the ground, the dynamic touchdown run to put them up by double digits against Pittsburgh. And what he did last time against Buffalo, 199 yards on the ground, really dictated the tempo, the dominating home win over Buffalo and Josh Allen. Expect a huge effort out of Derrick Henry this weekend.
You mentioned Josh Allen. It was interesting. It didn't feel like he was dominating against Denver. Then you check the final numbers, completed 20 of 26 passes, 272 yards, multiple passing touchdowns, ran it as well. Not a ton, maybe a little more with this weekend's matchup against Baltimore.
Absolutely, and think about the last time that they played Baltimore on the road. Josh Allen did not have a good performance, 180 yards, a passer rating of only 73.9. Expect Josh Allen to bounce back in a big way.
Now, one guy who maybe did not have the type of game he was hoping for, that would be A.J. Brown. More pages read than balls caught. Finished that game 1 1 for 10 against Green Bay. Do you think A.J. Brown bounces back with a matchup against L.A. on deck?
Absolutely. You read the book. He's primed and ready. And think about the last time that they went on the road and played Matt Stafford in L.A. He did have a dominating primetime performance, six receptions, 109 yards, and a touchdown. I expect him to bounce back with a huge performance this weekend at home.
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting things when you think about that Philly offense as a whole is, do they need an AJ or maybe just the pass offense at large to be special in order to win on a consistent basis? Maybe no, but at some point you imagine they will need more out of that Jalen Hurts-led pass attack.
Absolutely. You have to win with your playmaker, Saquon Barkley, but more importantly, your marquee quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and his star wideout, A.J. Brown.
It was the first game back for Jalen after the concussion against Washington. Philly did not play any of their starters in their Week 18 game, so some wondering if that was rust. If so, all right. No harm, no foul. But as this thing goes on, the matchups get a little bit tougher. We'll see how it plays out. We'll be following all of this here. Joe Lisi, Kevin Walsh, as the postseason unfolds.
You're watching Beat the Odds.
Sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. And powered by Sports Grid.
If you don't have plans for the championship weekend, come to Vegas. We throw the best football party in the world. Scan that QR code. That is our show's website, beattheoddstv.com. Now let's send it on back to Sports Grid.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here, taking a look at some of the postseason performers who you got to try and figure out what are we going to get moving forward. You look at Matthew Stafford, right? He is now at this point in his career postseason proven. He's won a Super Bowl, right? The question is the LA offense operating at the level necessary for them to get back to that level, Joe, and specifically Matthew Stafford?
I don't think it is, Kevin, even though they dominated Minnesota in terms of a neutral field, and he stepped up with that first-half performance, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, and they built a first-half lead against Sam Darnold in Minnesota. Think about the last time that they played Philadelphia. They lost in terms of double digits. He was playing from behind for much of the second half, and look at what that Philadelphia defense did with Jordan Love. Forced 3 interceptions. It's a cold environment. L.A. going outside. I'd be a little skeptical about Matt Stafford and the LA offense this coming weekend.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. They played the type of game against Minnesota that they weren't required to do a ton ultimately. They started really hot. I think the lull that they hit in that game is forgiven due to the nature of it, but it'll be interesting to see because what awaits for them next week is, in my eyes, the best defense in football. Going over to the other conference here, James Cook for Buffalo continued a career year, and he had probably the best postseason game of his career with 120 on the ground and a touchdown. The 23 carries is what really stands out. Is this the type of workload we expect from James Cook in these big playoff games?
Not this weekend against Baltimore. I expect James Cook to actually be utilized more in terms of the passing attack. They're going to need a much better effort out of Josh Allen attacking this Baltimore defense. And look at what Baltimore did to the rushing attack of Pittsburgh this past weekend, right? They held them to 2.8 yards per carry, less than 100 yards on the ground, forced predictable third down situations. So look for Baltimore to take away James Cook in the rushing attack. That means Josh Allen in the passing attack over the top.
On the Baltimore side, the Zay Flower absence had many thinking that Mark Andrews would step up at, the star tight end for this team. He wasn't even the star tight end for this team in that game. Is this what you see for Andrews moving forward?
It could be when you see Isaiah likely step up with 50-plus yard performance. He's the better route runner, a more hybrid type of tight end. Andrews, the big bulkier back, and could be utilized in terms of red zone opportunities.
You also have a situation where they ran the ball 50 times. Not a lot of work out there. We'll be keeping our eyes on all of it.
All right, so this player's kind of like our show. Some weeks great, some weeks All right, today the boys are debating Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, let's talk Jalen Hurts over under 204.5 passing yards. I'm going under in passing yards. Look, he's gone under 180 passing yards 4 times in the last 5 games. What's Philly's game plan on a cold, potentially snowy day? Saquon and more Saquon and less Hurts. LA plays slow. We're talking about the number 25 team in pace and plays per game. So it's not going to be a ton of plays in this game. And LASD is dominating. Each of their last 4 meaningful opponents been held to 10 points or less. Under Hurts passing yards.
Most of that is wrong. I think LA has to score points. They're going to have to throw it 50 times. They've got to take Philly out of their comfort zone, make them score points. I think there's a lot of passing on both sides in the cold. Let's go over 204.5.
All right, can Houston hang tough with KC? Who's going to win that game of the year in Buffalo? These guys have their best bets next. As always, ending the show with best bets. A little different today. Let's do some pros against the Joes. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off what you said. I'm gonna go over KC and Houston. I think KC finally scores over 30 points. They're rested, they're healthy. Rock and roll time over that game.
That's a good pick.
Well, it wouldn't be a show if I wasn't fighting with Jack. So I'm countering his LA Philly over. I am going under. The coldest day in Philly in the last 10 years. It's gonna snow. Strong defenses, relying on the run, eating up the clock. We're going with
Bring Brandon back in here. I'm going to talk to him about how to form tackle somebody. That's what that is.
All right.
Okay, let's go.
All right, go for it, pros.
Tornado.
All right, let's talk about KC against Houston. I'm going to lay the points with Kansas City in this ball game. We already heard it on the show. Dave talked about it. They're getting everyone back. Multiple key defensive players back from injury. DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy. All of a sudden, the receiving core is healthy. Houston got momentum off one lucky play last week. That doesn't mean they're good. And if they fall behind, they can't come back. They got blown out on the road in the playoffs last year. I expect the same.
I gave away Buffalo in August or September on this exact show. I'm not jumping off the ship now. I gave it 17-1. Josh Allen's protecting the ball. And Orchard Park, really difficult this time of year. Stop the run. You win the game. I'll take Buffalo.
All right.
Alrighty.
Pros against the Joes.
We'll see who comes out victorious next week.